Hey guys, just want to do a semi-quick video about the Rage of Sigmar, and in my experience, it seems to be dying down. Um, the initial before the starter box came out, the Rage was pretty intense, and now it's calmed down a bit, but there's still a lot of vocal minority, I think, complaining about Age of Sigmar, and I wanted to address that. For the people who actually enjoy Age of Sigmar, my opinions as to why there is so much hate out there right now and how to deal with it. Because I know that in my group, there's been a schism for Age of Sigmar, and it's hurt our personal group, not our gaming group, our personal group, pretty substantially. We went from being a pretty solid core of 6 or 7 to 8, probably not 8, 6 or 7 guys gaming on weekdays, and that's dropped down to 3 or 4 that play Age of Sigmar, and the rest have branched out into other games or aren't gaming at all anymore. And it's not entirely Age of Sigmar's fault. Everybody found new games, people become busy, but our core fantasy group has completely fallen apart, and future campaigns have pretty much been deleted from our mindset because of Age of Sigmar. So, what are some of the points that people make about Age of Sigmar when they rage about it? The first one that I see most commonly is that there's a lack of balance, and that kind of ties into the second one, which is there's no point system. Points really isn't a balancing mechanic, and mini wargaming, I didn't used to like them because they stuck me up in Canada. That's actually ironic that I'm wearing the I Don't Want to Die in Canada shirt. Um, it was not planned originally. I did not like mini wargaming for a long time because they were very rude and disrespectful to us. A couple of people in the community, including the Sustainable Center and the Durami.com channel, and I drove up to Canada to play games with mini wargaming, and they stuck us up. They didn't show up. Um, their staff members said that they didn't even know anybody was coming up after we had been in contact with them via email. So I recently started watching them because they've been putting out Age of Sigmar content, and I like listening to battle reports while I paint. And he actually brought this up while I was typing this argument, and he addressed it pretty much what I'm going to say. But the lack of points doesn't equate to balance. Take 2,000 points of Tyranids without any of their new toys that they got in the whatever that campaign was that they did, the Leviathan Rising or whatever that campaign was. I don't remember. Just straight up codex. No drop pods, no new zoanthropes, none of the big new monsters. Take 2,000 points of Tyranids with no flying hive tyrants and put it against 2,000 points of anything else, and it's going to be an uphill battle for you. You probably are going to lose every time. That was the same in Fantasy, 8th edition. If you had a 2,500 point uh, goblin army with only goblins, you were probably going to lose. The only reason you brought that to the table is because you liked the thematic aspect of it. So points don't balance the game. What points do is give us a window to agree on how many models we're bringing to a game. Because you're always going to have that dick who brings, the flying circus, or who brings 4 super heavies, or whatever, right? And then in fantasy, it was even worse to an extent because you saw cookie cutter lists. You saw the Ever Queen for a while anyway. You saw the Ever Queen in Legion of White Lions with the World Banner Dragon, and that kind of shifted to being Dragon Princes with the Banner of the World Dragon. But you see these power lists show up at tournaments in local events because people wanted to play competitively who also wanted to play locally who might not have enough money to buy both types of armies would only run power lists at their local game stores. And it hurt the community. And we'll go into that later. But really, it wasn't. Points have never been a balancing factor. And I mean, my experience with War Machine is very limited. I played a lot in first edition, second edition, not so much. But again, points there are very much a restriction on what you can bring to a specific game. Not really a balancing mechanic. There are units that cost the same number of points that, when put up against each other in a one-to-one fight, are not fair fights. Infinity's the same way, I'm sure. Again, not a huge amount of experience. Pretty much first edition. I think they're on third edition now. That's just coming out, and I haven't played since then. But I'm assuming that one model worth of points against another model's worth of points is not a one-to-one ratio. It's not a balanced fight. You can always break it. So the removal of points and then the removal of balance from the game is not a one-to-one ratio. I think that this is actually a really smart balancing mechanic, and I don't know if GW can execute it correctly, because that means that the individual units have to be balanced, their individual unit cards, so that the unit itself is balanced, so that if two balanced entries that have pros and cons available to them are put down on the table next to each other, it's a bit more of a fair fight. But removing points from the system and making it war scrolls, and the rules as written are that you deploy a war scroll, your opponent deploys a war scroll, and you keep deploying until you decide that that's enough. So if I put down Nagash and 3 units of Hex Race, and then I say, you know what, I'm done, this is going to be a fun game for me, and my friend has a Runesmith, a Cannon, and a unit of Thunderers, he might deploy 2, 3, 4, 5 more units to be able to fight me. And that's the whole point. That's where the list building comes in. The list building comes in at the table. It comes in at the battle. It's, you see what your opponent is coming to fight you with across the other side of the table, and you put down answers. And it might not be a matched war scroll game. It might be 3 war scrolls to 10 war scrolls, and it'll be a close, fair, fun game. So points don't matter. They're actually a restriction on what you can bring, because the most powerful things that you can bring are always going to be at the top of your list. Whereas now with War Scrolls and the way that deployment works, you can bring the fun stuff, and then your opponent puts down something that you can't deal with, and you have the option to bring more stuff to deal with it. On the downside, it means that your opponent's going to get one of the sudden death scenarios right off the cusp, as opposed to later on in the fight, potentially. Depends on how many models they put down. Or if you're playing a scenario mission, that might be the scenario already. There might be restrictions in the scenario as far as what you could bring. I mean, the first scenario in the Storm Breaks campaign for Age of Sigmar is you start the game with half the war scrolls that your opponent starts with. And then the remaining war scrolls come in from the table edge. So the point is that points in a game system don't necessarily balance it. And in fantasy and 40k specifically, it breaks it, because it means that you can't take an orc army, a goblin army. You just can't do it. If you want to be competitive, if you want to put the time and the money into the hobby, you want to be competitive, you want to have that option. Everybody wants to win. So you go with the most competitive options. Now with Age of Sigmar, if I put down a really competitive list and you're only playing goblins, you could outdrop me by 10 or 30 war scrolls and make it a balanced game. That's the option. So I'd like to hear your comments on that. That's my opinion. I'm starting to warm up to no comp at all on Age of Sigmar. I think rules as written is fine. I think that summoning is fine. I think that, and we'll go into that a little bit more, because we have a couple of We lost the video footage for the summoning games that we did. We did 3 summoning games, and we lost the footage for it, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll be replacing that. Next week I'm going to Gen Con, and then hopefully the weekend after that, so 2 weeks, I'll be putting up a couple of battle reports. So yeah, that leads into that there's no skill or depth in the rules because it's only 4 pages long. Well, yeah, the pages are only 4 pages long, and half of those pages are deployment. So realistically, the rules of the game are only 2 pages long. But when you look at it, there only needs to be 2 pages of rules. A lot of the rules are on the unit cards. If they do something that breaks the game core mechanics, it's on their unit sheet, on their war scroll. Whereas before, a unit that had always strikes first and had spears, you had to go to your big rule book and look up what did always strikes first and what did spears do. So that was 2 different pages in 2 different sections of the rule book. That was in the weapon section and in special rules section. Now it's on their war scroll. So the depth of the game comes in from the war scroll. And people who have only played the game once or not at all and are only reading posts on their War Machine forums or their local group where they only play War Machine or Infinity or the other games, and they're just shitting all over Age of Sigmar because they've never played it and they're just like, how can this game exist? It's just getting really irritating to me. If you haven't played the game, how the hell do you know how depth or how much strategy there is in it? The amount of different tactics that I've been uncovering in my 75 plus games of Age of Sigmar right now, there's a lot of mechanics. If you put 2 units next to each other that are 6 inches apart, you make a no-fly zone. You either have to charge one of these 2 units or you can't walk through the center. You put your archers in between that line and you're shooting down a fire lane with no penalties to shooting. And they can't charge your archers without charging one of these 2 units because you can't move within 3 inches of an enemy. So they're like, that's something that just popped up to me recently, not immediately. There's just little nuances in how you deploy your models or how you line your models up for a fight that will restrict how many models your opponent can fight with, and then on your activation you pile in and get all of your attacks. It's actually incredibly important where your positioning is, even more so than in 8th edition. In 8th edition, your positioning was, I've got 2d6 plus my base movement speed. I'm going to set up right here, and you can't charge me, and I have a pretty statistical chance of charging you. It was a safe bet. Now with only 2d6, everybody's on the same playing field. You can be charged if you can charge somebody. There's no more cavalry advantage. It becomes a very high-risk game moving them within charge range, because if you fail that charge range, if you're at the absolute maximum charge range and you fail it, you need like a 9, 10, 11, 12, and you fail it, you are going to be charged next turn. So you have to be ready for that counter charge. I'm not going to get into it. There's depth there. Again, the arguments that I hear people from, especially on forums, and I can pull from this from our local group, people who've played the game once or not at all complain about the lack of depth. And it's there if you play for it and you look for it if you give the game a chance. If you're not looking for it, there's no depth. I can say right now that there's no depth in Infinity. How can there possibly be depth in Infinity with that much terrain? It's literally just hugging corners and shooting down alleys, right? There's no depth at all to that game. I've played it twice in first edition and once in this edition. So, am I founded in my decision? No, absolutely not. The death of fantasy, and there's no competitive game. All right. So, fantasy is dead, but as far as I'm concerned, fantasy was already dead. When was the last time somebody new got into the hobby? When was the last time that somebody showed up to your local game store for an organized play event or a tournament that was new? For me, never. Like, not in years. Probably a year and a half. Nobody had shown up that was new to fantasy. It was the same 6 guys, and we stopped running fantasy events because it was the same 6 guys. So, fantasy was already dead, as far as I'm concerned. I loved the game. I loved playing 8th edition. I loved the rank and file, but the game was dead. I would rather play against new people and have GW try something entirely different, which is what they did, than for GW to pull a plug like they did on Mordheim and Necromunda and Battlefleet Gothic and all of their other subsection games, and just say it's not working. We're done. I would rather play something new and be able to use my existing minis. For Age of Sigmar, outside of the starter box, I haven't spent any money on the game. I've only been using my existing models. So it cost me nothing to try the game out. And people who are setting their armies on fire and not willing to give the game a try are just, it's a whole level of stupid. And then the final concern that everybody's talking about is my army's invalidated. Well, again, if 8th edition was just plugged and it was the last edition, which is still an option for people. You could still just play 8th edition if Age of Sigmar is not your cup of tea, but I'm just saying, play the damn game. Try it. Try to play Age of Sigmar. Your army's invalidated. Okay. If 8th edition was the last edition, your army was invalidated anyway. Now you have a free rule set with free rules for your army to play a new game system that is in its infancy. It's had a 4-page leaflet and then 1 campaign book come out. We have no idea what's coming. It's a living rule set. There could be changes. There could be a competitive version of this game that comes out. And I think the biggest turnaround is the Sustainable Center, who was totally anti-Age of Sigmar and then played 1 game against MC1 Gamer. And now he says, if there's a competitive version of this game, I'll come back and play it. That's great. That's what this game needs. It needs a competitive version, but we need to work the kinks out. So the people who are playing for fun need to keep the ship up. They're the night guard. They need to keep everybody alive at night. And then when GW can release a campaign or a competitive version that the tournament players are interested in playing, then the game is going to take off even more. Right now, it's only going to be casuals and people who want to play story-driven campaigns, which is great because that's what I love. I love that. I got the competitive out of my blood. I went to tons of GTs. I went to Ard Boys every year. I got the competitive out. I'm done. I want to do the campaigns. I want to do the narratives. I want to do the fluff. I want to have fun, interesting games. Age of Sigmar is about that right now. It might have a competitive version in the future because GW realizes, well, we can't live off of only the hobbyists, only the people who want to have fun, people like me who are having fun with our existing 8th edition army. Let's introduce a hard mode, a tournament level game with more clarified rules. Not necessarily more rules, don't change the core aspect of the game because I like the core aspect of the game. Just flush the rules out. Make the rules for summoning clear as for what they intended. Deployment, make it clear as what they intended. Competitive. It might not even come from GW. It might be a Swedish comp or an ETC comp style thing that happens where people get together and want a competitive Age of Sigmar game, but they want to play Age of Sigmar, and they'll come up with the rules because, again, GW didn't balance or comp their 8th edition. ETC and Swedish did it. If you went to any tournament, what was happening at that tournament? There was ETC or Swedish comp, so there'll be something similar to that for Age of Sigmar, I'm assuming. So, that being said, that's my why is the Rage of Sigmar not warranted. It's because the game has been out for almost a month now. It's a living rule set. We don't know what's coming. It could change. We don't know. That being said, I went out and I picked up the Baleful or the Realm Gates yesterday. And this model, I was not entirely sold on. I mean, we're playing, and we'll be recording it, so hopefully there'll be a battle report today, or tonight, or tomorrow, before I go to Gen Con anyway. It's going to be Wood Elves against Demons, I believe, and we're going to be playing the mission with the Realm Gate in the middle, so I went out and I grabbed it. And it is an amazingly fun model to paint. I was not super impressed with it on their web store, but let me tell you, this thing is awesome sauce, and I'm super happy I picked it up. And the best part is you get 2. So, yeah, so that's my video. I just had to get this out there and try to relieve some of my own stress that I've been feeling from uh, people just shit talking Age of Sigmar. I'm tired of it. I really am. The people who are shit talking it haven't even played the goddamn game yet, so I wanted to throw this out there as a kind of, give the game a chance. I know MC1 Gamer has been saying that a lot, but really, give the game a chance before you immediately dismiss it. There's a lot of strategy to be had if you look for it and you're willing to put in the time to find the nuances that your army works with. Um, just very simple things that you might overlook that have huge synergy aspects, like Slann Mage Priests being able to channel through their skink still means that your magic arrows that do the mortal wounds, you can cast it once through your Slann, through your skink into the hero, and then cast your skink's magic arrow into the hero, and you do d6 mortal wounds to that hero in one turn. And if you have multiple skinks, you can do it again. And it's just, there's a lot of ways that the armies flow into each other and make each other viable and lock in. Bretonians, for example, their Pegasus Knights being able to fly in, attack again because of their special rule, and then flee 10 plus a d6 inches away, and then charge in with another unit of knights, and then regroup your uh, your Pegasus Knights, flee with your actual knights, charge in with your Pegasus Knights, attack, and then alternate back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Anyway, so leave your comments down below. Let me know what you guys think, what your guys' opinions are of my topics. Keep it civil, keep it polite. If you disagree, great. If you're rude, I'll ban you. You can disagree with me all you want, as long as you're civil about it. It's a conversation, not a harassment. So hopefully I'll have a battle report for you guys tonight. Wood Elves against Demons. You can maybe see my Tree Lord, as they're called now, in the background, getting ready for battle today in about a couple hours. So I will see you guys in the next video. Take it easy.